again, this is where we kind of stretch into the maybe not so relevant topics, but I really kind of wanted to talk about Jameis Winston today. And there was a story or a question that was aired on ESPN that kind of got me thinking, and it's a question that definitely I've thought about before, but I didn't really know where I wanted to fit it into the show or which show I wanted to do it for. I was kind of hoping to wait until maybe some more news came out about it, but where does Jameis Winston fit on the Saints, and is he a good fit for the Saints? Is he the heir apparent to Drew Brees, which Drew Brees hasn't necessarily retired yet, but the odds is that he will retire, and that really obviously leaves a huge hole for the Saints, who haven't needed a quarterback in close to 16 years. And Jameis Winston is obviously a name that everybody should know, especially in that division, considering he played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a 5,000-yard passing season and that 30 touchdown, 30 interception season that, of course, he thought he was one of the best seasons that a quarterback has ever had. But realistically speaking, if you're throwing 30 interceptions, I don't know, my guy. That's really rough. But regardless, is Jameis Winston a good enough quarterback to replace Drew Brees? I mean, Sean Payton has gone on record and said that the next quarterback for the New Orleans Saints is in the building. Now, whether he meant Taysom Hill, whether he meant Jameis Winston, that's obviously yet to be seen. We saw what Taysom Hill could do last season. I wasn't exactly thrilled with Taysom Hill as the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, it was a different look. Obviously, Taysom Hill's running ability is a lot to game plan for, but his throwing ability left a lot to be desired. And that's just the kind of quarterback that he is. He's definitely a utility piece. He's definitely a piece that you can bring in for a couple of sneaky trick looks, but is he good enough to be a quarterback, a franchise quarterback for the New Orleans Saints? I don't think he is. And he's a little older too. I think he's in his 30s already. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for Taysom Hill to be the next starting quarterback to the Saints, which obviously points us to Jameis Winston. And again, the reality is that he's the best option, but he's also the cheapest, and he is just a really good heir apparent for Drew Brees. Not necessarily a really good, but he's probably the best options that the Saints have, especially with their salary cap situation. They're $82 million over the cap, so they need to make some decisions. They don't have the capital to go out and get a quarterback in free agency, and they're probably not high enough in the draft boards to be able to take that first round quarterback that you would want. So, again, Winston didn't do much on the football field last season. He signed a prove-it deal, like 1 year, $2.5 million. So since Winston didn't do too much on the football field last year, you can expect that he may sign a similar deal this offseason with the Saints. Unless he decides to sign elsewhere. I mean, there's a very good chance that Winston decides to sign elsewhere for another team that needs a quarterback, but reportedly Winston is on board with returning to the Saints. The Saints are on board with having him. The only issue really with Winston is, and this is his biggest flaw by far, is that he's very analytical. He thinks too much. He is an overthinker, and when he tries to think too much, he does too much. He tries too hard, and it gets him in trouble. So when you place him in an offense like he was in Tampa Bay, where it's an air raid offense, a lot of the responsibilities on his shoulders, it falls on him to get things done, you can see why Winston had the season that he had before leaving. I mean, if you think about it in that context, it makes perfect sense. He had 5,000 yards, but he also had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, which is, again, it's like, oh man, like this guy's amazing. And it's also like, man, this guy is bum. He is an absolute bum. But when you think about it in the context of, man, Winston is an overthinker, he tries to do too much, everything makes sense. So what do you do to a guy that thinks too much? You put him in an offense that requires not a lot of thinking. And I don't know about how complicated the Saints offense is, but looking at it from, a viewer's perspective, it's not the hardest offense in the NFL to understand. I mean, a lot of it is slants to Michael Thomas. You got seam routes and a couple of cutback routes. It's a very nickel and dimey kind of offense. And then it's predicated on the fact that Alvin Kamara's your running back. You got the play action ability, and that's when you take your shots. But with a simplified offense like the Saints, with a bunch of slants and checkdowns to Kamara and some seam throws, you have the potential to have an easier and simplified offense for Jameis Winston to run and understand, and that's going to allow him to succeed more because he doesn't necessarily feel the need to be able to take over the game. Now, is he going to be the end-all, be-all for the Saints next season? No, I don't think he is, but what I am saying is that with an offense that is less reliant on throwing the football down the field all the time, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a couple of years ago, it doesn't all fall on him. It's not all of his responsibility. And he has a better chance to succeed in an offense like that as opposed to the one that he was in. And I think, yeah, there is something to be said for sitting behind Drew Brees for a year. I think you have the potential to learn a lot. I assume that the conversations between Winston and Brees were very beneficial for Winston. So obviously none of this can be disproved or proven because we haven't necessarily seen him on the football field a whole much. I mean, we saw him in the divisional round against the Buccaneers in which he had a one-play touchdown for 65 yards. But again, that was a drawn-up play, design play. Doesn't necessarily mean much. I think it was a trick play even. So again, he hasn't done enough to basically say, well, he hasn't done enough to really demand a good contract, which again, the Saints really can't give him anyways because they are so down in the hole in the cap space with the salary cap. So he's probably one of your cheaper options unless he gets offered more to go elsewhere, then otherwise you're kind of in a tough pickle. But he's your cheapest option. He's a decent option. He has the chops to throw the football, but if you can place him in an offense that's much simpler, like the Saints offense appears to be, especially with a receiving running back like Alvin Kamara, he has the potential to succeed, and he could be a good heir to the Saints organization, the Saints quarterback situation, until they feel the need to try and find another person there. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.